Hello, hi everybody. It's great to be part of Lánacrite Harp Day, and I've got Lághachrit, and so I have two harps with me, my grandmother's harp here and my own. My grandmother was a wonderful woman called Róisín Ní Shé, and her sister Máirín Ní Shé was known as Mrs. Ferreter to many. She was the harp teacher in Sion Hill for a long time, and many of her students now, you know their names. You'd know Mary O'Hara, you'd know Kathleen Watkins, you'd know Janet Harbison, all these wonderful, wonderful performers and teachers and singers. And Máirín, my aunt, my grand-aunt Máirín was their teacher, and Róisín was my teacher. So I'm lucky to come from a wonderful family of harpers. I took it for granted. There was a harp. This harp was in the corner when I was a child, and every memory I have of growing up involved some kind of music from both sides of the family. But I luckily have been able to keep the harp going myself. But I suppose I'd tell you a little about the sisters first. I'm doing some research on them at the moment, so it's great to get a chance to share some of this information and some of the family history that we've been working up together. So first of all, they were from Dublin, believe it or not. The O'Sheas originally came from Cork, but Máirín and Róisín were two of five sisters, and they all played the harp, and they all learned from a woman called Caroline Townsend, who came from Cork apparently, but was a wonderful, inspiring teacher. She taught them the love of singing songs in Irish with the harp. And that was my grandmother's big passion, and Máirín's big passion too, was that people would sing songs in Irish with the harp. And actually, it was my big rebellion as a child. I never did sing with the harp at all. But as Máirín was lost, and then my grandmother was in her last few years, the importance of what they were trying to say finally clicked in. You know that if you don't keep them going, who will? So really, I guess they were growing up in a Dublin, a very different Dublin to us. It was a time when I suppose. It was the new state, the Free State was just founded, and they were these young girls from Dundrum who played the harp and spoke Irish at home. An oddity, a rare thing in Dublin in those days, still is, but we did the same. But their love of, I guess, of singing really with the harp was what they passed on to others. And I know any evening in their house in Clonskee when I was growing up, my grandparents would have sessions, and there'd be people in from Brittany and from Wales, and they'd all be joining in different songs, and the harp always figured. So I'll do a tune for you that I learned. My grandmother was my inspiration as well as everything else, and she arranged this piece for me for the ceoil back in, I guess, 1989 or 1990 probably. Anyway, Mr. O'Connor, many of you, if anyone heard me play a tune, you know Mr. O'Connor is my tune, but this came actually from an arrangement that my grandmother sketched out, and then she handed me the sketch of it. It says, now, so she wanted me to work up my written music, and it was something I would always avoid because I was learning everything by ear, and she'd always try and make me read it as well, but as well as, you know, she'd teach it to me first by ear, and her method was always to pass it on that way first and then to try and make me read. But anyway, this is a piece that has been with me. It's my good luck charm, I always call it, and it's called Mr. O'Connor. invariably it's always a piece that I start a concert with, or I kind of a good luck charm when I get somewhere. But that all started really, I guess, back in the late 80s when I was just starting off, and I'd go up to my grandmother every Friday after school and Sunday after Mass, dutifully to learn. And she was a great teacher in that she'd never force anything, and she'd always watch to see what people were interested in, and then she'd kind of coax it out of them. I used to see her teaching other students, and I'd watch her. She'd just ask them what she'd watch them react to different pieces, and she'd always talk to them in Irish first, and if they didn't respond in Irish, she'd switch to English or French or Breton or Welsh or whatever, because she spoke all those languages. And I used to see the same with Auntie Máirín when I'd go to visit her. She lived up in Goatstown, and you go up, and if you catch her when there was a student there, it would always be a song, of course, or two songs. She'd always drag you in to play something, and her favourite piece was Tuaidm de Love by Róisín Ní Shé. And I remember she had 9 harps, and I had no harps at home at the time. I now have 9 harps. It must be a family trait. But I used to go up and play Tuaidm de Love for her every week that I get a chance to, in the hopes of procuring a harp, which worked after about a year. She had a little Joe Porter harp, modelled after the John Quinn harps in Dublin. But it wasn't her favourite harp, but it was mine, because it didn't have 31 strings. It didn't have the bass D and E at the bottom. But anyway, it was a great ploy. It worked in the end for me. I got my little harp out of it. And Tuaidm de Love, of course, is a staple. Everybody, it's in the repertoire for everybody. So I'll spare you that one. I'll leave that to your own imagination. But there's one of the songs that I was thinking of that I hadn't thought about in ages, still thinking about what I'd say Lám Crite. It was a song that toward the end of Róisín's life, she didn't play too much. She would play the odd time, and she loved playing, but when she was called upon to sing, I'd be drafted in to do the accompaniment on the harp. And a piece called Shean was the party piece we worked up for a long time together. It's one of those songs of lost love, where the man promises to meet the woman somewhere, the girl is left standing waiting, and there's no sign of him, and he promised to meet her, and then he never showed up. Typical. These stories still go on today, but anyway, so this is our version of this. Róisín is missing, but I think she taught me the words, hoping that I would eventually sing it sometime. I just wish I had sung it when she was alive, but I didn't. So little regrets, but I'm glad to be doing it now, and I haven't played this in ages. So this is Shean Ní Shé.
Agus ialla se dosu, o goham greacham halam verdús. Nagus ialla se yeg sin, o goham echem tísidin me agus tú. O da ialla naig a leham, o gar ligas a letsamurú. Nach farir o tána sléite dulidéir mésa tú. Stama hardín bhreab násach, o sohrá gamach mustileadair, gach bós I dháir. O táfas níos tímar glas na gref, ní chluisim san áitseo, ceol cúlair sí mú ceúrin, nó dewaig mórán, cúlí náling go Krishna.
She knew great. She allowed me. It's a song I haven't sung in ages. My goodness. Anyway, but as I was singing that, I was just thinking back to some little anecdotes about the O'Shea sisters, and one came to mind. A wonderful force in the harp world. A man called Tom Maher, Colm O'Mahony's dad, the late Colm, the wonderful harp maker. But I remember once in Mullingar when they set up a branch of Coid and the Critte in Mullingar, and I was down, and Tom Maher came up to me and says, "Do you know that I walked up to your grandmother's front door in 1942 and I asked the O'Shea sisters to play to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Belfast Harp Festival, the Harp gathering in 1792. And it was an image because, of course, there were telephones, but not everybody had one. And I could just see this brazen young Tom Maher. He was in the army, in the Irish Army, and he'd up to the front door of. They lived in a place called Corcogreen, named after the district, or the region rather, down in County Kerry, the Gaeltacht region. But this was a house called Corcogreen in Dundrum in Dublin, and it had a lovely avenue, and it had, I believe, it had chickens and a little farmyard and everything. And I never saw it; it was gone sadly before we ever came along. But the house would have been full of various different, I suppose, characters along the way. I know. My grandmother spoke of the soirée downlig. They used to have a gathering every Sunday when they were children, and they were, I guess, teenagers. And Róisín played the harp and the piano as well, the concert repertoire, classical piano repertoire, and they would sing. And the other sisters, Niamh, Nuala, and Nessa, would also sing and play the harp as well. But they were all, I think, Niamh and Nuala and Nessa decided to sort of sideline the harp in the end. But Máirín and Róisín, my grandmother, were the two who stuck with it. I suppose, not everybody can be a harp player all the time. Your passions are elsewhere, but I know Máirín's passion was in teaching in the end, and Róisín's was in travelling. So you'd see Máirín, and I know she went off to London with Mary O'Hara and my grandmother to perform together, the three of them. And then I think Máirín's sort of her wings that she settled down in Sion Hill. And the amount of people who went through that school with her, I know that, like I mentioned, Kathleen Watkins and Mary O'Hara, of course, and Janet Harbison, whose legacy knows no bounds really with the amount of students she's had and inspired. But Deirdre O'Callaghan, all these wonderful harp players, these names you might have heard along the way, but they were all students of Máirín's in the harp room or Mrs. Ferreter in Sion Hill. And I've come across people in so many places. I know I was at a concert in Germany somewhere, and a woman, an ex Aer Lingus air stewardess, she was actually called herself at the time, handed me a photograph of my grandmother at the foot of the stairs of Aer Lingus plane with Paddy Maloney off to play somewhere in, I think they were in Brittany at the time. But and I've discovered that Willie Clancy and my grandmother did a concert together in Quimper in Brittany in 1951. So she was quite the prolific performer, my grandmother, and Máirín was the prolific teacher in that sense. They both performed in the early days, and I know I found some accounts of Máirín talking about the Mod in Scotland and the Eisteddfod in Wales, the equivalent of our Oireachtas festival. They all played there, and they were guests of honour at those things indeed. And I know Máirín's accounts were read out on radio in the 1930s by her. I found those scripts of those little accounts, and to see the songs that they were singing then and get a chance to sing them again. And of course, Róisín in the 40s and 50s had a radio programme, and then she had her own show on, though she was Mamo, of course, on Dilly No Douse in the 80s. Anybody growing up in Ireland of the 1980s would have seen Dilly No Douse. And this was the harp, and we were the children around the harp, and Mamo was my Mamo for real. So she was, I suppose, I don't know whether she was the first to have a harp on a regular slot on a children's programme ever in harp, but it was a great old series. Tony McMahon was the brainchild behind it. His brainchild rather. It was his idea. He was the driving force that created Dilly No Douse, and anyone who saw Mamo, you can thank her for being Mamo and thank Tony McMahon for the idea. And I know Agnes Cogan then produced it afterwards and kept the spirit alive, and really. These songs that we learned as kids, I know other people learned them as well, but you take it for granted when they're around you so much. But I know I'll do one more song for you now. I'll do the one that my other party piece. Anyone who knows me will know I love singing this song. It's a lullaby called Shean, shean show, it's also known as. Yeah, no, I suppose the legacy that they've left behind really is a wonderful one. I know Mary O'Hara, many of her songs she learned from Máirín and Róisín, also from Sean Ogo, my mam's granduncle on the other side, all the Cork people. But apart from that, I wonder what else I could say about them. They still got the amount of people now that I still meet who don't know too much about them. So I'm glad to be able to tell them a bit extra about where they were from, and their teacher Caroline Townsend being such a I suppose she was on her own. There was no one else teaching it. I mean, there were teachers in the convents, of course. Mother Attracted Coffee. You have all these wonderful stories of the harp being, the repertoire being kept alive. But someone like Caroline Townsend, her cup at the Fesh Ceoil was for Aura and Letún the Cumcritte. So it's 2 songs, I think, with harp accompaniment. And of course, that was taken over by Chormac de Barra, the O'Shea cup for Máirín and Róisín. And I know my grandmother would present it every year. But towards the end, it was sad that there were very few people entering the competition, and I know it's changed again. I know the Flag Ceoil also has now got plans to bring back in competitions that people can sing and play harp to their own harp accompaniment, and that is a wonderful thing. I know my grandmother would be delighted to hear that, and she'd be delighted that I'm starting to sing a bit now with the harp as well. My own work has been great with the likes of Hazel O'Connor and Moya Brennan. I've been having to sing more, and I know this she's wherever she is, she's laughing at me now, going, I told you so. Yeah. So if anything else, if anyone feels like they might want to give it a go, I know it got a bit, I suppose in the 80s it got a bit, I know hackneyed is the word maybe, or a bit, people just got a bit tired, and the fashion changed, but we're bringing it back now anyway. So I'll leave you with a little taster. This is the Swan 3, the lullaby, the Chormac de Barra, or shean show, which just means hush-a-bye or rock-a-bye. So shean show.
Nach ik leef onóir som réal. O shean Ní Shé, shean Ní Shé, stúm leanmh, shean Ní Shé, Shean, my lamb of Máirín nach éile onóir san réal. Shean